The Agenda with Michael Knight on News Radio 560 KPQ and KPQ.com.
At 11 minutes past 1 o'clock, our show begins. Let's say hello to the mayor of Wenatchee. Frank Kuntz is here today. Mr. Mayor, welcome. And once again, it's good to see you.
Michael, always great to be here.
Let's start with public art on Chelan Avenue. People think that art is something that's an extra. Art does not come with your meal. Do you agree that the public art, it belongs or does not belong in the city?
You know, we have debated this off and on since I was even on city council some 12 years ago. And, we think that certain buildings and certain community assets are better off with a hint of art in them. So if you go to our Public Works building out across some foothills, when you walk up to the building, there's a bunch of art that's there. There's stuff that we've stamped into the building to make it look different and make it look appealing and make it look different than just a standard run-of-the-mill office building. If you look at our current city hall, for instance, it is devoid of anything that's beautiful, the building itself or the inside of it. So as we look at the new city hall, perhaps at the federal building, we're looking at what can we do to make it pleasing. And you'll see that in a lot of city halls around our state and other sort of government buildings. How do you soften the blow? How do you make it appealing? Our downtown really has a lot of the Arts on the Avenue artwork featured a lot of different places. I constantly see people stopping, looking at them, spending some time. So art is part of a city, art and culture, right? Whether it's the Numerica Pack and you're going to see a show, or you're going to go listen to the choir sing, or any of those sorts of things, a community has to have an active and vibrant arts group, or it's not really a city. And so I consider the money that we spend on art, the stuff on Chelan Avenue is done by the citizens that live in South Wenatchee, and they wanted it to be painted and done in a way that helps their culture,
reflected their community.
Yeah, and so good for them and good for us for helping them. And you're going to see more of that as opposed to seeing less of that.
The most beautiful cities in the world, and you can make your own list, which one is the most pleasing to you, is really beautiful not because of what they've done to it, but because of the way they've built their city.
Yes.
The way it sits in their environment. So we've got that going for us here.
Yes, we do.
And the buildings in the most beautiful cities are really the most pleasing aspect of those cities. The great skyscrapers, the old monuments, whatever the museums may be. So you don't have to put art into the street to make the city beautiful. Build beautiful buildings, and that'll do it.
You can build beautiful buildings. You can do such things as require certain landscape on commercial buildings to soften the blow of asphalt and parking lots and require them to put in trees. And so, there's all sorts of things that we do to try to make our community more than just asphalt and buildings, right? To make it a place where you're comfortable to be. We want to be able to walk down the streets, and art and landscape and architecture, all part of that.
I completely agree. Now, to go through all this list that I made before you came in the building, and thanks for coming, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
The Youth Academy is getting ready to meet again, and this is an example of reaching out to the community, from the city reaching to the people who live here and saying, let's understand one another perhaps better than we do today.
The Youth Academy is basically an outreach of we just did a general academy just based on policing. And it's really learning about how a police department is run, how police officers are trained, what they're required to do when they show up to the scene of a crime, what's it like to drive a police car really fast, what kind of training do they have. And so we did one for adults last year. I think we had 35 or 40 people come. And really, it's just designed to teach people what's it like to be a police officer. And so that you have respect for officers when you see them out doing their daily job. You go, that person's been trained, and we know what. And so just kind of an education. And so what we'd like to do is get enough high school kids excited about doing the same sort of thing. So spend, 15 or 20 meetings a year, an hour and a half each, and learn about your police department. And learn just everything that they're trained to do, learn all, how to tase and all the stuff that your police department does. And it's important to generate community support for your police department, because sometimes that job is really hard and sometimes the outcomes aren't what you and I want them to be. Yet the more that people know about what they have to go through and how they're trained, the better off we all are, quite frankly.
Plus, they face quite an adventure every day.
Quite an
it's
adventure
not not always going to be a pleasure to see them pull up to your house when something bad is happening.
Yes, and whether it's life safety stuff, I know we've had a couple of heart attacks in our area recently, and our police officers have been working on those. Or if it's a tragic event where an officer is required to use his weapon, our officers are trained, and they're trained really, really well. And just the more that people understand that, the better off our whole community is. And I think that's the best. That's what these academies are about. It's just educating people about how the police department works.
One aspect of this job that's been really great for me personally is that I get to meet a lot of sheriff deputies, chiefs of all the departments, and I get to know them as people, not as they're not doing their job when they come in here. They're talking about their job. They're talking about the training and the people that they work with. And you just come away with a completely different impression of the man or the woman than you would if they pulled you over for going 80 in a 50 zone.
Yep. And listen, we have great leadership in all of our sheriffs and police departments in our region. And so you are really, when you interview them, you're interviewing the best of the best, right? You don't become the chief of Wenatchee Police Department without being an exceptional leader in other departments or within your department or a captain in our departments. So we're very, very fortunate that we have the leaders that we have, and they are people. You forget that. They're dads.
It's so easy to forget
and
it.
their sons and their daughters, and they're human. And all that comes with that, whether the good and the bad, right? I say this all the time. I'm a human. I make mistakes often. Try to learn from them and be better next time. And our police department, they do a fantastic job, but there's always a human element to it.
Chief Crown is making up his mind now whether I'm going to be allowed to ride along with the Wenatchee Police Department. We've passed the legal and the executive scrutiny here at Cherry Creek, so now it's up to the Wenatchee Police to put me in the back seat, which I'm sure they've been dying to do for some time.
Yeah. With cuffs or without, right?
Yeah, exactly. I won't struggle too much. Let's talk about something that's been top of mind for a while. We don't know exactly how it's going to play out. Maybe you do. The Wenatchee City Hall is moving from the nondescript place you just described to the old federal building, which a lot of people thought, well, I had it introduced to me as we knew when they built it, it was going to be a boondoggle, all that white marble. What the heck was that all about? And I said, well, it's kind of a nice building, even though there's nobody in it. But now there is. Now we have a tenant.
There's going to be, Michael, I would say in probably 3 to 4 years, that building will probably have 200 employees in it.
Wow.
It will be a happening place. So we've purchased we haven't quite closed on it yet. Should close this week, but we're in the process of purchasing really about 2/3 of the main floor. If you were to walk in the old days, probably before Michael Knight, and where all the post office box were and the mail sorting area was. So we're buying about 2/3 of that floor, and then we're buying all of the top 2 floors. And it's interesting. We did a tour last Thursday of 3 or 4 newer city halls over on the other side of the mountains. And 2 of them have been built in the last 10 years, and they're already full.
Wow.
So we're really glad that we purchased as much real estate as we purchased because we've got enough office space there for the next 50 to 100 years for the city employees. So we feel really good about what we've purchased. And now we got to go through a process of design and then getting the main floor sort of redone as City Hall. And that's the idea, is that main floor with the tall ceilings is going to be the new City Hall in 2020 or 2021.
And that's, I think, a good idea, but also you've got the parking to go with it.
There's
got a huge lot in there.
Yes, but you put 200 employees in there, and we're going to be doing some angled parking on the streets, and that whole area is going to change a bunch. So, we're really looking forward to it. And I think if you go down Chelan and you look to the right and you see all that marble, the architects basically have that marble coming out in glass going all the way down, so you'll be able to see in. So we're going to sort of try to soften the look there a little bit and try to make it, when you come into City Hall, make it more user-friendly, customer-friendly. We'll have hopefully more than just 1 or 2 departments in there. Hopefully get your building permit, your business license, pay your utility bill, do all of that in one spot. Right now you've got to do some of that at the current City Hall and some of it out of Public Works. So we're really trying to think about the customer experience and, for the builders and those that use the city on a regular basis, what's the best way to get us all in one room? So
plus, it'll stop saying U.S. Post Office and we can call it our own.
Yeah, call it Wenatchee City Hall, if you will. And so that's sort of where we're headed. We really got a great bang for our buck financially. If you think of the number of square foot that we bought for the price we paid for it, the remodel will be expensive, probably in the $9 to $10 million range, but at the end of the day, we will have a fantastic building, and it will be the City Hall for the next 50 to 100 years.
And in those next 50 to 100 years, do you imagine that the idea of Imagine South Wenatchee is going to come true, that that's where the city is going to grow?
Yes. I look at really sort of, in my mind, 4 distinct neighborhoods. I look at South Wenatchee with its own sort of residential and commercial core. I look at our downtown, which currently has a commercial core, doesn't have a residential core, so we need to add a residential component to downtown.
Good.
I look at North Wenatchee, mostly where the fires were, the old Stemilt warehouse, and where Washtot's leaving and Northwest Wholesale's leaving. I look at that as having a residential and a commercial component. And if you made me in charge of the world, Old Station would have a substantial residential component to go with its commercial component. So
there's room for that, isn't there?
There's room for that. And for cities to survive in the Amazon world, you have to have both together. And if you don't, you'll fail. So you look at South Wenatchee, what it needs is a commercial core and kind of a commercial hub. It's got a bunch of residential stuff. So we're working. I think the federal building's part of that, quite frankly.
Revitalize that whole area.
I also think we're going to spend, $3 million redoing Met Hall Park. I think that's part of it as well, and the streets around there. So we're focused on South Wenatchee. I'm equally focused downtown, but downtown needs residents, right? It needs a residential component to make your downtown, make those businesses and shops and restaurants really flourish. We need to get people living downtown.
It's so easy to look at downtown and not see the second story.
Yes.
And that's where the future lies, right?
They're there. They just haven't been redeveloped as quickly as we would like them to be. And then in North Wenatchee, it's the same thing. You've got this huge 30 acres of property, kind of starting from scratch. Some of it on North Wenatchee Avenue, some of it just across the tracks. And you go, God, if you're building a city, wouldn't you build a residential with a commercial component together? And so I think we're really working on trying to make that happen. And then if you look at Old Station, well, it's missing a residential component. It's got retail. It's got some industrial stuff. What it's missing is, I think all of that stuff has to go together. And I think if you don't do it, you're doing your city a disservice.
And there lies in the growth that we're looking for in terms of the housing shortage. All those solutions are right there on this side of the river. I mean, a lot of people have always suggested, well, Douglas County is where we're going to grow. Mm-hmm. They've got all the room. But that's not a realistic solution because people want to live here.
So I think
they want to make a choice.
Yeah, Douglas County will end up being a lot of the single-family houses on the smaller sort of lots. We need to build in and up. Right, so we're going to have the 4 and 5 and 6 story buildings. We're going to have the commercial downtown, and we may have some of that. As our waterfront is more developed than their waterfront is, the park system on our side is more developed. It only makes sense that you have 4 and 5 story buildings along the park part, so people can view the river, enjoy the park, and walk to your favorite restaurant or bar to have a beer or whatever you want to do. So we're just trying to build those communities, and every one of them that I just mentioned is missing a component. And we just got to try to plug in those components, and then in the next 15 or 20 years, this will be quite a spot.
Some things, in some towns, the old town gets developed in a way that no one really plans, and it grows into being the new old town. And I don't know what's going to be, but it occurred to me that big hotel going in down by Pybus is going to change a number of things around it. In other words, if you wanted to open a new restaurant, well, maybe you'd want to open it next to 200 customers who are staying right in this hotel. If you wanted to open a new event-based gathering spot like Pybus Market anywhere near there, you've got a new hotel going in. And I wonder what the city fathers have told you about the way that might make the city grow when it's complete.
Well, again, it's interesting, Michael, when you back up 25 years, there was nothing on our waterfront. That was the garbage dump. Right?
Hard to believe.
Hard to believe that. And now with Exhibit R and what the PUD has done to the parks, and then what we did 10 or 15 years ago to put in the street system and stuff, and then you get Riverside 9, you get Pybus Market. There's some commercial office space down there. Now our waterfront is the prime property, which it really should be.
I agree.
We're just sort of hitting our stride, and there's still great opportunity up and down our waterfront to do more. So, I look at Pybus Market. I love that place to death. And when you put 170 hotel rooms next to that, some of those little businesses in there may change. There may be more restaurants there as, people leave the big hotel looking for a place to eat. But you can also walk right across the walking bridge and be right into downtown.
There you go.
Gastropub and Bob's and a number of places downtown to eat. So We think just getting sort of people here, all of those are going to help.
And it'll change the face of the city in some way.
It will.
It'll probably, we can't predict.
And some of that stuff, it just happens, it's not like the city is pushing for hotels to come here, but hotels are saying we want to be in Wenatchee. So we've got the one on the waterfront. We've got two others that want to come to North Wenatchee Avenue. So a lot of times people think, well, Frank, why don't you bring this restaurant to Wenatchee? Or why don't you bring this business to Wenatchee? And the cities don't generally do that. It's the businesses that come to us and say, hey, we're looking for a spot in Wenatchee, show us some locations and meet with our department folks. So it doesn't always come where we get to go pick.
And they always have the same things. We want Cabela's here in town, or we want a Trader Joe's.
Yes, Trader Joe's.
Or we want a variety of other things to make our lives easier. And they think, well, the mayor will handle that. He'll just call Trader Joe, and he'll be here in a minute.
Not the way it works.
It's not the way it works. Let's talk about some of the other things that are going on, though, that are working, and that is the Apple Loop federal grant. That's a lot of money.
Yes.
$150 million.
So that infra grant is with Secretary Chow, the U.S. Department of Transportation. She's supposed to be making her decisions. We were told it was going to happen last week. Then I met with Congressman Reichert. He said no, probably 3 or 4 weeks, although I was told on Friday, maybe this week. So we should hear something in the next, I would guess, 2 to 3 weeks as to whether or not we were successful. Successful means we got anything. We asked for $150 million. If they gave us $50 million, that's a success. If they give us $20 million, it's a success because we've got different components of this that we can work on. So the longer-term play is we need to get another bridge across the Wenatchee River to help folks get in and out of town.
There you go.
From the 30,000-foot level, that's what we're trying to accomplish. And there's 2 ways to do it. You either put this Confluence Parkway in, which is on between the railroad tracks and the waterfront, or you widen North Wenatchee Avenue and add 2 more lanes and rip out all the businesses. So we've really felt like this Confluence Parkway, although we're trying to, thread a needle, is really the best opportunity for us. And so we're pushing hard to get there.
Which one do you vote for?
Confluence Parkway is the best, least cost. It's the least costly way of doing it. North Wenatchee Avenue is always going to have that commercial component that you see. We need to soften the blow a little bit, right? We need to put in some trees. We need to widen the sidewalks to make it a little bit more pedestrian friendly. I'm nervous when I walk up and down Wenatchee Avenue because you're so close to
You're right
traffic.
on the traffic.
Yeah, and so we need to do some of that, and there's plans for us to do that. So we're working on that, but ultimately, having another way to get out of town is going to be the best.
I mentioned in our introduction the Adversity Advisory Council.
Yep, Diversity Advisory Council, yep.
When you have a city, we want everyone to get along. We hope that people will get along. We assume that they're going to get along, but we can help with councils like this one.
Yeah, and, Michael, a number of years ago when this thing was first formed, there was some minorities in town at a certain restaurant, and they didn't get served appropriately. And
it was a thing.
It was a big convention that was in town, and it got front page news. And so the mayor at the time, Dennis Johnson, I was on the council. We formed a diversity advisory council to help us with diversity, help us work through some of these issues. And so the council's done a fantastic job. They really have. They put on the Martin Luther King Day event. I think we are doing lots of things well. What sometimes happens is the national sort of discussion kind of leaks into the local stuff, whether it's immigration or, some police officer back in Ohio, shoots a black guy, with his back to him, and all of a sudden all police officers are bad. And so there's these sorts of things that kind of trickle their way through and work their way into the conversation at a national level, and sometimes it comes to the local level as well. So we have to discuss those things, and I really think we do a remarkably good job. We could always do a better job, but it's just those guys do a great work, and we're just trying to, become more aware of all the different. I don't know if you've been to a nationalization ceremony yet. There's one coming up June. I want to say the 26th.
I have before.
You need to go.
I have.
Absolutely remarkable. Because you would think if you went to a nationalization ceremony in Wenatchee that there would just be the Hispanic population. There's Russian, Iranian, you name the nationality that are become U.S. citizens right here in our valley. And it's really remarkable. And you need to go to one of those events and just watch that happen.
I have been to one of those events, not here, but elsewhere, and it's really inspiring.
Yes.
And it's also comforting to know that there's a room full of people who really know their American history and the forms of government and how they work.
Yes.
Because they have been tested.
Yes, and these are the people that did it the right way and went through the whole process and learned and took all the classes. And so, again, I think we do a fairly good job. We can always do better. Diversity is one of those things you never say, oh, we're done, right?
No.
We got it right, we're finished. No, it's an ongoing effort.
Correct. And one thing about those people that have taken their citizenship vows is that they can tell you exactly how long it took them to get their papers.
Yes.
How many years of effort and constant paperwork to get there. It's not easy.
Not easy.
The mayor of our city has joined us with this. I was going to bring up the idea of a district vote. That sounds like a complicated subject, but can you have a 30-second version of what the district vote means?
Yeah, so currently your 7 city council members are elected at large, so they each represent the entire city. There's been some discussion of going to districts where we'd have 5 or 7 districts. The council is going to vote on July the 12th, I believe, is the date where we're finally going to get that to a vote of the council and see what it is that they want to do. Seems like cities in eastern Washington are going to districts. Yakima has, Pasco has.
And why?
I think just to make sure that getting back to our diversity, just making sure that we have a diverse city council, that they're not all living on the same street. We obviously have folks in South Wenatchee and North Wenatchee and West Wenatchee and all sort of areas, and does it make sense to have districts where you would know who your councilman is because they live in the same neighborhood as you? That's sort of the idea.
Mayor Frank Kuntz, the mayor of Wenatchee, once again.